Hey everyone, today for another vlog. So the day just after, the vlog about the 50-minute vlog, by far my longest one about, about mainly society. But I mainly talked about society, and today I just felt like continuing further, maybe not as long. I don't know. It's kind of crazy. I went for 50 minutes, even though I had like 3 lines of prompts, just things that were coming up as I was just thinking about, recently. So I guess this one is still going to be pretty like intellectual, like thinking about society and all. Because I feel like talking about school today. I was listening to a talk and an interview of Jacob Lotfinsker. I might link the thing, and he said a lot of good stuff about school, about how it's just an awful place. Like it's really just an awful place. You don't learn anything. You just get programmed. So this is what I'm going to talk about. So the two main things that I can see about school is like, one, it's incredibly traumatizing. It's a very traumatizing experience. It creates a lot of shame into you, and it's very weird how school has been the only place where I've witnessed violence. I think this is very telling of the bullying and coercion that happens in school. Is that the violence happens because the kids get bullied by the adults, basically. The second one I see is what Jacob talked about, which is that the learning that happens in school is complete shit. Like it's complete garbage. It's very narrow-minded, closed-minded problems, right? And it leads to people who are not thinking and they don't learn much in life, and they just become like those technicians, almost like technicians, but not in like the physical sense, of like being able to solve actual physical problems, but more like following very strict guidance by someone else. Like they don't think and so on. Specialization. So perhaps I should start with like my own experience of school. Where do I come from? I've actually always had pretty fucking good grades, like in primary and secondary school, which is until 18. Like university starts at 18. You have like 6 years of primary school and 6 years of secondary school, and then you reach 18, and then you may or may not want to go to uni. Yeah, until 18, I had the best grades, and even in university, I had good grades. So I don't come from like a place of lack. I don't talk shit about school because I've done poorly at school. Like I talk shit about it because it's such a shit experience. Like that's just how it is. School is an awful experience. So to come back on my first point about trauma and bullying, it very much feels to me like the children are straight up bullied, like by the adults. I mean, first of all, the most obvious thing is that obviously it's obvious, but it's actually kind of horrific that it's true that children have no say in going to school or not. They are forced to go to it. That's coercion, right? That's forcing them to go to a place they don't want, doing things they might not want, forcing them to sit all day, even though they're super fucking full of energy and want to do shit and explore, and we force them to sit all day. I think already that is actually a pretty traumatizing experience. Forcing someone to sit when they don't want to. In my experience, it's actually quite traumatizing when it's done forcefully, which is very often the case. But I think the main form of trauma that comes from school is like the being judged part, where like you're judged all the time. The grade system is obviously the main one that comes to my mind. I think school, I think school is mainly about separating the quote-unquote good kids from the bad kids. In my experience, it's not about learning. So the good kids are the ones who obey, basically. I mean, they also, you also have to have some type of intelligence, where like it's not completely trivial to get good grades, but it's mainly about obeying. Right? It's mainly about obeying and being quiet. And it's very funny how being a good kid is about being quiet, even though like it's not about like giving a good opinion or like thinking well or whatever. It's about being quiet. It's quite funny. It's not a coincidence, I would say. But yeah, it's mainly about separating the good kids from the bad kids, and obeying is the main thing, and you're constantly judged for for how well you do in school. Like you're basically defined by that's where the trend of like being defined by your job starts, in my opinion, is like how the fact that we define kids based on their grades, like, yeah, and that's a very like how to say, a very utilitarian way of looking at human beings, like just like how much worth you have as a human being is how good your grades are. I think that's super fucking cold. Very dehumanizing way of looking at human beings, and the only reason it's not shocking is because we do it all the time. Like we do it with net worth, and like if someone has like is successful with like the opposite gender, and they're like, yeah, this guy is like this girl is attractive and all that. Therefore, they're more worthy, right? So this super normalized judgment of people based on things that starts with school, and that's hugely traumatizing. Like it creates so much shame about people. Like it has created a lot of shame in me, right? Like I was like the smart kid, as they say, and I was made fun all the time by people around me. It's kind of interesting. It's very interesting to me why the smart kids get bullied. I don't know. Like as I've said in the introduction, I believe that violence and bullying, they are downstream of the bullying that happens from the adults to the children. Right? The quote unquote bad kids, they get judged and made to feel bad about themselves by the adult, and I think those kids who don't do great at school, they use other kids as like their own, like they transfer the bullying, right? Like they transfer the trauma, but transfer would imply that it resolves their own trauma, but it doesn't. Right? They just multiply or spread the trauma is what happens in practice. So it's hard to describe, it's hard to express how much like shame and unworthiness this constant judgment creates, because you really have to see it in yourself, but it's super constant. It's like I remember when I was in university, it was literally like my last year, right? Like it was just it was just last year for me, because this is my first year out of university, and I was working with one of my teachers on my master thesis, so like the end, the like the final work, if you will, before you just stop university, or dissertation, whatever it's called. And yeah, at some point he was just like, was really frowning. I was like displaying my text, and I was like explaining what I was doing, and because he was like, my advisor, and was reading stuff and giving me advice, and he was like just frowning because he didn't understand something, and I can swear to God that like that frown, right, like that really frown, it actually made my body so tense. I felt so much tension because it's like it's as if my body remembered the tension of being judged all the time by like my parents or the like teachers, when because even though I was doing very well in school, there was still like some things there was still like a few projects that I struggled with, mostly like the really long projects. At the end of secondary school, there was a similar project where you had to do like it started at the beginning of the year, and by the end of the year, you had to like give like like a 50-page essay or whatever. And yeah, I was awful at those really long projects because because the way I got things done was basically through coercion, and I didn't really know how to be consistent with projects. I didn't learn project management, which is what you even need to get things done. I only had the tool of coercion, and I didn't have the tool of project management. But this is only something I've learned recently, so yeah, it's very crazy how little you learn in school. So yeah, that was just a small anecdote to try to convey like what it feels like to be shamed and judged all the time. Like something as anecdotal as like a frown, or like just one person frowning at you, it made me feel so tense in my body. Like I literally struggled to like breathe properly, uh, like for like the first like for like the following 20 seconds, and I had to like slowly calm myself. But like I couldn't even like express it to him because I don't think he would have understood it. So yeah, it was a pretty shitty experience. It wasn't like a huge deal, right? It's not like I was gonna die or anything, but like to me it felt crazy the amount of tension I felt for such a seemingly innocent thing. Because that's how like to me that just reflected how powerful trauma is and how much buried buried? Yeah, buried trauma there is in my body. like that I haven't been able to express. Because like for example, in my first year of university, there was this really really harsh teacher, was incredibly judgmental and very like he genuinely seemed to enjoy like feeling superior and like making students feel bad, and yeah, I like the energy in the room was just very negative and toxic, and like he wouldn't he would actually like how to say it, um he would feel quite okay with like just making a student feel bad for like not getting something right, like in front of everyone else. It's quite it was that level, you know, like very. It wasn't like it wasn't academic, right? It was very judgmental. It was quite a judgmental teacher, and that I think that was one of the many examples I have of like teachers who just make you feel bad. Like, they just try to make you feel bad about yourself, and it's really really sad how common that is. Like I am not. It's not like I'm some poor soul who has gone on to. I'd say actually quite. I'm actually quite lucky when it comes to school. Like the school experience I have, they seem pretty okay because so many people they are bullied by teachers, and they're told all the time that they're stupid and they can't learn and whatever. Maybe not explicitly, sometimes explicitly, like crazy enough. Sometimes some people are explicitly told that they're stupid by the teachers, but oftentimes it's not explicit. It's more implicit, and it's got like this underlying tone, but you can still infer it right from like the way they treat you, and it's so damaging to a child and to the adult they become, that to constantly be talked to with this tone of like you can't learn anything and like you can't, you know, you're dumb and all that, because then you carry it your entire life, right? If you think you're dumb in your 20s, you're probably not going to start thinking that you're smart in like your 30s, because you're always going to carry that, and you're never going to like explore things that require intelligence because you're afraid and all that, because you think you're, you know, because you've been led to believe you're stupid. And so it becomes like this reinforcing belief that started in childhood but never really questioned. It's very crazy how those things affect you throughout your entire life if you're not aware of them, which is why psychologists always talk about like, you know, what happened in your childhood. But like, that's a very cliche thing in psychology, but it's incredibly true. Like it's incredibly it's incredible how much we are shaped by our childhood, and especially by what school does to us. Because, you know, at least our parents, they usually have good intentions. Or like they might not be perfect. I have many things to say about my parents, but they have very good intentions for me. Like I know that they try their best. It doesn't always come out well, but I know they try their best. But with school, you actually can't say that. You actually can't say that the teachers at school have your best intentions, have the best intentions in mind. Like it's actually quite sad that this is true. But at the same time, I do want to add a note of positivity in this, because this is important to me. I've also met a few good teachers who were genuinely pleasant human beings and who treated children with respect. And to me, this is a fucking miracle that those people even exist. Like, to me, there's like no incentive structure for those people to exist, and yet they do. Like, it's crazy. Like, there's no reason for someone who is like good with like how to say. There's no reason why someone with like that amount of patience and, you know, who is able to like go to university to become a teacher, because in Belgium you have to go to university to become a teacher, to become a high school teacher, especially if you want to teach like a 4th, 5th and 6th years, right? So like 15, 16, 17-year-old students. You have to go to university, and like it's crazy to me that someone with that amount of patience who is able to deal with kids and who also has, you know, the background of studying at university, have both of these qualities, that they would actually exist, right? Like the people who go to university, they usually do something else than being a teacher, right? With a degree. And if you have that amount of patience to deal with kids, you probably especially doing something else. But yeah, it's crazy to me that they're actually good teachers in my life, and I'm very grateful that those exist. I mean, I actually think the reason I went to study mathematics was because in fifth year, so the last year, the year before the last year of secondary school, I had this really great teacher who, he just had a great presence. He was just so pleasant to be around with, and he really seemed to care about mathematics. Like he, like he really took it seriously, and he also had this quality of just being a very great person. And I don't. That was one of the few people in my life who I was really like. I really felt like he was a great adult, and he was really good at talking to younger people. And yeah, and I wonder how much of that weighed into my decision of being of studying mathematics. Rather, I don't really consider myself a mathematician, but because it's, to me, that's like doing research, right? So, but I did study mathematics at university, and I enjoyed it in some ways not. But it's the reason why I didn't enjoy it had more to do with school than the actual math. I quite enjoyed math overall, but the way math is taught is not fun. However, but that has more to do with school, right, than math. By the way, I just want to throw this out. So, why did I go just study mathematics? So, the second reason I can see is that I stumbled by accident on like the channel number file, and they really made topics around maths really interesting. It's called number file, but they make videos on maths, not just numbers. Like numbers are a very small subset of math, right? And they made math really interesting, right? And it was so fresh compared to school, and I really enjoyed that. It felt really cool, like the ideas, and I really liked the interconnectedness of math, although it wasn't like that present back then. And yeah, and the interconnectedness of math is kind of lost nowadays. I'm going to talk about that. Why? Like specialization, hyper specialization, and all that. It's kind of sad, but yeah, I think number file was a huge reason. At that time, when I was like 16, 17, there wasn't the channel 3 Blue One Brown, but I think he does a much better job at explaining math. But number file was great, In some ways, what it was great. I mean, I think 3 Blue One Brown is way better at explaining math, but number file was great. I think it was like I think it was a very important part of like the math community to make people appreciate math. And I think the third reason, and I kind of want to throw it out there, is like, I don't know if people remember this. There was like this thing in like newspapers where they make this survey or like this graph about like which job was the best in terms of like paying or job satisfaction. I don't remember which metric they used, and they put mathematician as first. And I remember my mom telling me this when I was like young. I was like 12 or 13, and I think that was low key an influence in my decision making. And I still believe to this day that this thing was a psyop. Like this was actually a psyop. Like I think this was probably like not super serious, and they just threw it out there to make people study math because not people are interested in math. I don't know. It's still my theory that this was a psyop, but I have no proof. I didn't really think about it. I don't even remember the thing, but it's just my just made up theory. I just I don't know. Just throw it out there. So yeah, I talked about the first part of what I wanted to say about school, which is the trauma part. I It's one of those things where you have to look at your own trauma to really see how big of a deal it is. It's hard for me to convey it with words. Yeah, but if you're someone who shames themselves a lot and judge themselves a lot, my suggestion is that you judge yourself because you've been judged a lot in your past. Not necessarily in your childhood, but often than not it starts there because children are so vulnerable and dependent on the social environment to survive that they are very sensitive to judgment. So this is this is just what I would throw to think about trauma if you don't really know what it is. So okay, so what about the learning part of school? Right? Like, how good is the learning in school? Well, it's god awful in my experience. It's just bad. No, it's way worse than bad. It's like it's as if someone intentionally designed it to be bad. It is mind-numbingly boring. First of all, it's really worth saying. Like this is really important, especially for children. School learning is so mind-numbingly boring, And the worst part is that a lot of people leave school with the idea, with the impression that this is what learning is. Like, learning is just sitting in a room, listening to someone you don't care about, talk about things you don't care about. And that's just how learning is. Like, even though learning is like probably one of the greatest things in life, but when you actually care about what you learn, right? Yeah, it's so the first part about why it's colorful is that it's completely disconnected from the experience of children. And it's a common complaint that children make, like, when are we ever going to use this? And it feels like people never address that question because they don't really take children seriously in actuality. Like, children are not really taken seriously in society, it seems. And but I think it's such an important question. Like, when are we going to use it? Because it's I don't even personally, to me, it's not even that. It's not even about like when am I ever going to use it? Because I can see the value of studying something just even if I don't use it. But it's more like why should I care about this? Like, why should I study something I don't care about? Like like I know that you should open yourself, especially when you're young, to things that might not interest you because you don't know what will interest you or not before you actually do it, right? The same way that you don't know how much you enjoy your food until you try it. So children tend to reject a lot of foods just because they don't look appetizing, but actually when they give it a try they tend to like it. So I think that is an important part of I don't think it's a good idea to just let a child decide what to study entirely, but at the same time, like you know what the fuck is the point of all this studying if it's not something you care about? Like it's just absurd, right? It's just absurd. And the fact that like assignments, when you think about what an assignment is a problem that was manifested out of thin air when you think about it. So there was literally no need to work, and then this teacher drops onto you this assignment that you need to complete, and if you don't, you're punished for it. Like what the fuck? An assignment is just a problem that has just been put on your lap, and you have to deal with it, even though there's like no reward for it. Like at least with jobs, as much as I can say about jobs, at least with jobs you get money, right? And okay, some people use their money really bad, but that's their problem. But like with an assignment, what do you get? You get a grade. Like, what is a grade? Like, what does a grade even mean? Like, assignments are so fucking absurd. And oh yeah, homework as well. That's Jesus Christ. It's hard for me to imagine that I actually had to go through homework at some point. Like the fact that to me now that I've worked, I mean I've only worked for 6 weeks, right? But to me the idea of working for free, first of all, second of all, working in the time where I'm no longer in this institution that forces me to work, it's fucking absurd. Like homework is like it's doubly inhumane. Like you're making someone work, not even for like a direct reward, just for a grade. Like what does a grade even mean? And second of all, you're making them work for, or another form of reward would be like, an actual form of reward would be learning something interesting, right? So that would be a form of reward. That wouldn't be money. Second way, which is it's awful, is that yeah, you're done with school, you're tired, now you're at home, the place where you're supposed to relax, and now you have to do homework. Like what the fuck? And yeah, I was actually quite decent at doing homework, but it's definitely not something I want to do nowadays because an adult would never accept homework, right? Like that's so fucking that's so inhumane, honestly. Yeah, so a lot of people they think that's what learning is. They think that school is what learning is, but it's not. Learning is really it's such a beautiful thing, like to just get better and actually understand something. And that's a pretty key point about school that you don't get compared to real learning. That real learning gives you understanding of something, whereas school learning just makes you better at passing the test. It just makes you better. It how to say it, in the same way that like an AI can learn to play a really basic game by just memorizing the moves. A student just learns that he can just memorize the answers to pass the test. Because why would you try to understand the thing? Right? Like usually when we program an AI, we want it to like learn the game in like an understanding fashion, right? We don't want the AI to memorize the things. We don't want the AI to just memorize what a good sequence of moves is, right? The same way, we don't want the student to memorize answers. We want the student to understand the thing, but they are not incentivized to understand it. So people just choose the easy way and they memorize, and that's such a shitty thing because the uh, the core point about learning is about understanding something, about making connections, and about being able to see patterns, and that's the cool part about learning. It's not memorizing things that someone else has like said or whatever. Like yeah, it's about being able to see something for yourself, and it's so awful that school is not about that because you know I hope it's clear that well I haven't really mentioned it, but I think it's worth making the point. I'm not blaming teachers. Like school is a system, and the failures of school are systemic issues. They are not the failures of individuals that teachers, they're not rewarded very much for what they do because Jesus Christ, being a teacher requires a lot of patience. Like it's I would say it's more about like the daycare aspect, taking care of children, and it is about the actual learning the school matter. Okay, and there's actually a point I kind of want to talk about, but I need to finish this point about school learning. And the point I want to talk about next is the people who become teachers, how they are taught. Yeah, that is also a fucking Kafkaesque problem. Jesus Christ, how utterly it's like the blind leading the blind, But I'm gonna get back to that. Yeah, so learn. So my what I just said about learning is that it doesn't teach you understanding, right? Like you're just incentivized to memorize, and in general, school just sucks as a system because the incentive structures are so messed up, and it's a very like it's also a very complex problem. Like it's a multi-dimensional problem because school is embedded within a certain society with certain beliefs and all that. And okay, I'm not here to give solution. I'm personally I'm just here to complain about school, but I can see that's a very complex problem. Like I'm not gonna try to come up with answers as how to fix it because I don't know. It's hard to say. But I don't know. I mean, these vlogs are mainly about expressing, and I think it is important to express that something sucks. As long as you don't like indulge in it, just indulging on negativity all day. But I think it is important to express that something sucks, because I mean, it's just true. Like school fucking sucks, and I don't know. Especially because it's related to my trauma and all that, well, because it's created a lot of trauma in me. But yeah, anyway, about learning. So that lack of understanding is really problematic because when you just memorize and you don't understand, you tend to be more significantly more narrow-minded, more myopic, as I would say. Like instead of thinking about problems as a whole, right, like solving problems and just thinking about what types of problems you want to solve, what you end up being is more like someone who just becomes very good through school at uh, doing what you're told, solving about the problems that are put on your lap, as I've said about the assignment thing. School is all about closed form problems. It's not about thinking broadly and making patterns to make sense of the world, which is what a big part of what learning is. It's all about closed form problems, and but the problem is that life doesn't work with closed form problems. But like if you want to understand yourself or decide how to become more free or like I don't know this understand what you genuinely want out of life. Like those are not closed form questions. Those are questions that are full of unknown variables. Like you don't know yourself, you don't know the environment you're in. Yeah, it's so many things you don't know. And on the other hand, so these are not puzzles, right? School is about giving you puzzles, but life is not a puzzle. Life is an exploration that is full of unknown variables and unknown unknowns. So what this creates is that creates someone who is very myopic, someone who doesn't question their assumptions because like yeah, you just spend all your time solving problems where like the statement is just a closed form statement, right? And as a result, like you just become someone who just thinks within the frame that they're given in, and that is very dangerous, especially when you're good at it actually, because it gives you the illusion that you're smart, but it's a very like restrictive form of intelligence. Similarly, like the idea, how specialized people become, especially in the modern world, like when you leave school, well, first of all, university is all about studying one narrow subject. First of all, it is worth mentioning. I mean, it's rather evident. It's like you study mathematics, right? You don't study how to become free. Like, that's not something that's not a university program. Like how to become free, or like how to know yourself, or how to develop healthy relationships. Right? You study Whether you study economics or mathematics, or you study I don't know, mechanical engineering, so very like specialized things. And these make you very productive within the economical system, but they also make you very mm, narrow in your life. They make you very uh, dependent on the system to live, right? Because if you have someone who is like, let's say, kind of medium at everything, on one hand, you could say that guy is a jack of all trades and he can't really contribute anything to society. On the other hand, the person who is incredibly specialized into one thing, they're completely dependent on all other aspects of society to sustain themselves. They don't know how to grow food, they don't know how to repair their devices, they don't know how the technologies that they use work, they don't know how their car works, they don't know how relationship works, they don't know they don't know how they work. So like they're dependent on society for basically everything. And okay, they might get a lot of money, right? Like a software engineer might earn a lot of money, but like that guy is completely dependent on society for everything. And I mean, you might be okay with that. I'm not okay with that, especially because I believe with a very strong conviction that society is on decline, collapsing. But this is another story. But what this means is that people are very specialized, and this is very problematic because it means that when the economy changes, because it will, the economy changes very quickly nowadays. There are going to be people who are basically going to become obsolete, like they are no longer needed, and that's very dangerous because you don't want to be in that place, right? Like no one wants to feel obsolete, and no one wants to be made obsolete and having to relearn entire skill sets just to sustain themselves. And also, like the way people are kind of like become replaceable cogs in a machine is really like, it's kind of horrifying to me. Like, if you have any experience with like publishing and like putting your CV on the internet, the act of writing a CV is such like a homogenizing, and like it removes all semblance of like individuality in you. Is so scary because what you do is you just list bullet points about yourself and like super generic descriptions about yourself for the hope of getting noticed for a job. It's it's like the most dehumanizing shit I've ever seen. Like instead of being like this super vibrant human being who has like interest in life and who has like a certain like worldview, you just get replaced by like programs in C and Java, studied for 5 years, highest honor, uh, a highly committed person, sociable, team worker, but also good at individual, like all this fucking bullshit, bullet points are just to sell yourself. And it's like the most dehumanizing stuff. And the bullet points, they make it seem like two people who study at the same place and who have roughly the same skill, it makes it seem like they're equivalent, even though it's never the case. But like, I can't think of any skill where there isn't like a huge difference between people who are mediocre and people who are like amazing. This is especially true for like programming or like more mental skills. Like there could be a huge gap in those fields. Like you could have like you could have like a factor of 1,000 productivity, honestly, like between like a really mediocre programmer and a good programmer, for example. So like the fact that it's a bullet point instead of like, yeah, it's not only is it dehumanizing, but it's also like really like homogenizing. Like it lumps people into the same thing even though they're not. So yeah, so that's the shitty part about school and like what it produces, like trauma, awful learning, hyper specialization, and all that. And I just want to end this with like how the teachers are taught to, because to me this is just a hilarious thing. So I never took up. So I had a choice in my master's degree. So the last 2 years of university. So like you have 3 years bachelor's and then 2 years master's at the end. You can actually choose not to do a master's, but like it's kind of at this point like you kind of have to do a master's to find a job, honestly, because like a bachelor's is not seen as enough, quote unquote. Actually, I don't know. I don't think I had to, but like there was so much pressure by my family if I didn't. But whatever. So I had a choice to like just have more math scores or like do like a specialization into being a teacher, but so it would take like 1/4 of your time in your masters to like have courses related to teaching. And Jesus Christ, man! So I know the people around me who like some of the people around me who chose that, and Jesus Christ, the way they are taught how to be teachers is like the worst fucking shit ever. Like no wonder that teaching is so bad, right? Like again, it's not. It's a systemic issue, I know, but like it's it's so fucking awful. It's like that they're focusing on like like the most insignificant details about teaching, and they completely ignored the main picture of teaching. Like I genuinely wonder if any of these people ever asked themselves the question, what is teaching? What does it mean to teach to someone? Why why do what are the failure modes of teaching, right? Like why do some people seem to learn well from teaching while others don't? Like, I wonder if those people ever ask themselves those questions, because instead what they talk about is like, well, the theory of media is such that appearance game means that different appearances make people look and interpret your message differently, such as, if you take a Dutch angle, someone can get this feeling of drama that they wouldn't have with a more flat angle. Like, this is generally the stuff that they would talk about, bro. I didn't assist any of the classes, but this is what they would report to me. And I would be like, what the fuck? Like, this is really what people talk about when teaching? Not about, the trauma and the learning and the worthlessness that comes from teaching sometimes. No, it's about those things, or like, like they talk about those super specific scenarios, like, uh uh what if what if there's like a minority in your class? How do you treat them? Like, do you run into this situation when you have to privilege, or do you have to like give a privilege to a certain group because they're doing worse than others? Like, okay, in some ways that is important, but what about the main point of teaching? What about the main point of teaching, please? Because I know for sure, I know how those things work, and I know that they don't talk about the big picture of teaching, right? Like, okay, honestly, actually, I think that was kind of a bad example, like the minority thing, because it kind of is important, but like, it's nowhere near as important as teaching. I think we can all agree. Like, if you don't have solid foundations of what teaching is, like, who the fuck cares how well you treat like different groups of people? Like, okay, you're gonna be a respectful one. Like, okay, you're gonna treat everyone equally, and you're gonna treat everyone equally shit because you have no awareness of what, like, how much you make everyone feel worthless. Like, how is that a good thing? I don't know. I'm kind of getting into rant mode, but I hope you understand my point, which is that the people who teach others how to be teachers, they're completely clueless. Like, by analogy of the blind leading the blind. Like, how do you know that those people are great teachers themselves? Well, you don't know. There's no guarantee, and because of the systemic issues and the fucked up incentive structure, it's very likely that they're just perpetrating even more bad teachers, right? And yeah, it's I'm very glad I never chose the path of being a teacher. It's having to work in a shitty environment is like one of the most discouraging thing in my opinion. And school is like such an awful environment. I would absolutely hate it. Yeah, I think I'm gonna be honest, that might sound quite good for people who go into teaching, but in my experience, the people who go into teaching, they only do it because they don't know what else to do with their life. Like I feel like it's very a choice nowadays to be a teacher. Maybe it should be, but I mean, the reason why it's not is because the school system is so bad that you're not paid well and you have to deal with basically babysitting kids. So yeah, I'm not interested in that, and I'm very glad. As much as I complain about my job, I'm very glad. It's actually a pretty good job. Like it's as good as an employee in the modern world can get, right? Which is not amazing, but it's good in many ways. So uh, yeah, school kind of sucks. I go into rambling mode again. 40 minutes seems like if when I get started on those topics of like society and how it coerces us into doing things we don't want, it's really gets me into talking a lot, right? So, yeah, I don't think I'm gonna add anything. If you find this interesting, then feel free to share. I'm especially interested in hearing about people's experience with school, right? Because with society, I'm more like that's more my personal experience than my more personal take. But I feel like with school, I'm significantly more interested in how people think. I think trauma is my current beliefs that trauma is like pretty much universal in school. Like people who go to Western, people who live in the West, or even the Westernized world, honestly. Like, I assume that even some of the parts of Asia that are more Westernized, even they have those things. My my belief is that school trauma is like super universal, but because we live in a world that is completely blind to what trauma is, people don't know what it is and they don't know how to address it. They misdiagnose problems as being like I don't know anxiety or social anxiety or like inability to focus or like apathy or depression. They diagnose those things even though the core might be trauma and trauma rooted in school especially, and maybe parents as well, right? Because parents and school kind of play a tandem sometimes. Like you don't do well at school, and as a result, your parents treat you worse, right? So that kind of thing. So yeah, thank you for watching. If you feel like sharing, if you have watched this 42 minutes video, I would love to hear your story about school. Uh, even if it doesn't agree with what I said, if you had a wonderful experience with school, then feel free to share it. I just want to hear people talk about school. So yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.